Hello everyone, this is Jay Grimmelkind here with another tutorial for Live2D. My previous tutorial is still getting a lot of views and attention, but it's fairly outdated. So I'm going to be going through, step by step in a series of videos, how to make each part of a Live2D model. I feel like splitting it up into multiple videos would be most accessible for viewers and most convenient for learning how to do Live2D models. So today we're going to learn how to do eyes. Right now I have the PSD file for my eyes open in a program called Fire Alpaca, which is a free-to-use program that can open and save PSDs. So I recommend it if you are just starting out with digital art and with Live2D and you don't want to spend a lot of money on something like Clip Studio Paint or Photoshop. You're going to want to organize your eyes into these parts. First, you want to get the top of the eye, the bottom of the eye, any eyelashes, the shine of your eye, the pupils, the lines for the iris, and the base of the iris. Technically, you could combine the line and the base for the iris. However, it can be more convenient to keep the lines separate in case you wanted to do any sort of effects inside the eye, such as like moving stars or other effects, and you don't want them to cover up the line art. You're also going to want the whites of the eyes. Remember to separate them by which side they're on. Then also have the skin. This PSD is just the eyes. See, there's no rest of the model, but since we're just doing the eyes, that's all we need. Now, once you have your PSD all set up, just import it into a Live2D editor, and we're going to start by setting up our meshes. Now, you can do the mesh by hand, or you can do it automatically. Either works. Doing it automatically, you're going to want to either use the heavy deformation or the standard deformation. Do not use little, as it will not give you enough points to manipulate. However, if you want to be very thorough, you may want to do your own meshes, as this will allow you to control the points at which you can manipulate the eyebrow or top of the eye. Alright, this method I'm about to teach you can also be used for eyebrows. I don't know if I'll be doing a separate tutorial for them because it is basically the same process that I'm about to show you. This is of course also not the only way to do eyes. Some modelers may find other methods easier or more effective. This is just what works for me and what I think is simple and easy to grasp for those who aren't very experienced with Live2D or digital art in general and just want to get their own models or models for friends done. Okay, and you're going to want to go through, add in the rest of the mesh. Alright, so now you have the top of your eye. You'll want to go to the parameter ILOpen. You can make your own parameters, however, you can also use the ones that are given to you by default. Either is fine, however, sometimes the pre-made parameters will have settings already set up for you to use them for their intended purpose, such as preset physics options and other such things. I want to reset to default values, so 1 is open, and 0 is closed. I personally get this backwards all the time, and I have to quickly try and fix it, so just try to avoid that. You can always hit reset to default values if you're not sure where you're at, if you've messed with a bunch of other parameters and you're not sure where the defaults are anymore, just reset to default values and it'll all click back into place. So what you'll want to do is go into ILOpen. Do not touch the default, only touch the maximum to 1.5. As you can see, the default will still be at 1. Now, hit the green button to create a keyform. Now what you want to do is go to 0.8. You can precisely move to any point on your keyform on your parameter by entering in the number here. And put another keyform there. and then go all the way down to 0 and put another keyform. This little gap here is to ensure that your eyes don't react too jittery to the face tracking. Sometimes the face tracking can be too sensitive and will have your eyes moving even when they're not like moving in on your face. Your model will have the eyes sort of jittering open and close, so you want to almost give a bit of padding here, so only movements that are large enough to get past this point will be registered as blinking. Now this empty part right here we'll get back to in a moment, but this is where your eye will be as a default. This you will not do anything with, it will stay where it is, and then you move down to 0 and that's where your eye will be closed. What you're going to want to do is hit this button up here. This allows you to create a sort of skeleton, or, well, I suppose it's sort of like a tentacle, where you can now deform your art meshes by pulling on these points. This is really convenient for eyebrows, eye tops and bottoms, and also mouths. I will also do a tutorial on mouths at some point, and it will use a very similar method to this. Now, if you want to precisely move parts, all you have to do is sort of click on them here to ensure you have selected the entire object and not one of the vertices, and then hit the arrow key. This will slowly move it down, and you don't have to worry about accidentally moving it too far right or left. As you can see. Now, this part varies based on the shape of your eye. However, as the majority of art styles will have the eye in a sort of upward arch, the next step is to pull the center of that arch down very gently. You're going to want to move things a little bit at a time to ensure you don't accidentally distort your art mesh too much. If you notice that you don't like the shapes it's deforming in, like you think it's lumpy, it's a little lumpy here, but I personally think it's okay. But if you don't like this look, then you can always add in more vertices to your mesh. You can also touch up these vertices yourself to get the effect you desire. I probably should have added more vertices here, but it's okay for just the purposes of this tutorial. You can also go back and move it down further if you haven't moved it down enough. Perfect. We'll do one eye first, just so we'll worry about the second eye later. Alright, now we're going to do the bottom of the eye. Once again, we're going to start by going in with our mesh and create our vertices. I'm going to try and create a few more vertices than I did last time, because I feel like I didn't add enough. There's a lot about Live2D model making, which is just feeling out what feels right, especially considering how different all of our models can look because of different art styles, different accessories, and just so much can be different. These are all just basic bits of advice and instruction that you can hopefully apply to any future models you create. And go through the middle like this. Alright, and that's the bottom of the eye. Don't mind the eyelashes just yet, we'll get to those in a moment. Now go back up to this tool, add in sort of deformer path shape here, and now ensure that your keyforms match up with the top eye. So you're going to want to put one at 0, 0.8, and 1. Once again, you're not going to touch the spot between 0.8 and 1. Instead, you're going to go down to 0, you're going to move the bottom of the eye up. And then, just gently, carefully bring up the bottom of the eye. Perfect. Now then, for the eyelash. We'll be doing more with the eyelash later. For now, I'm just going to give it a just standard mesh, and then I will also have it line up with the parameter. Just sort of rotate it and move it up till you are satisfied that it follows the bottom of the eye realistically. Alright, wonderful. I'm sure you're probably wondering what we're going to do about the iris. After all, you can see it poking out the top here. Some modelers will do an eyelid, which will be a sort of not visible, but still present bit of the skin color over the eye. And that is a completely valid way to do it. However, for our purposes, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to go to the whites of the eyes. I will quickly apply a mesh while I'm here. For the whites of the eye, you can just automatically put down your mesh, or if you do it by hand, try to follow the shape I'm doing, as this will allow you to easily manipulate it to sort of squish it down for the closed eye. Alright, now take the ID of your eye whites. It was probably automatically just assigned art mesh and a number. You can change this name if you like, but make sure every single item has a unique ID. I believe the editor will not allow you to use any names that have already been used elsewhere in your model, but just in case, try to avoid that and so you don't have any strange errors occurring. Now you take this and copy it. Now you're going to want to go to the iris base and do clipping ID. Now, wherever the iris goes, it will only show up if it is overlapping the whites of the eyes. Do the same thing for the iris lines. Make sure you hit enter after you enter in the clipping ID or else it won't stay. Do that for the pupil, as well as the highlights. Now this means that if you are to move or distort the irises, or the whites of the eyes, the iris will also follow that deformation without changing the shape of the iris. Now then, go to your same points on your parameter as before. 0, 0.8. There is an error that will pop up. There is an error that will pop up at the bottom here. However, don't mind it for now. We will come back and fix this. Basically, it's saying that it doesn't know when to show the iris or not because the whites of the eyes are disappearing beyond a certain parameter. Meanwhile, the iris is not disappearing. And so there's an inconsistency. We will fix that later. So just ignore that error for now. Go to 0.8 and 1. Alright, now go to the closed eye parameter, and you could hypothetically use this tool again. However, I find it unnecessary. You can just grab your vertices and pull them in carefully. Just go one by one and bring them down to the middle here. It's going to look strange until you're done, but it'll be alright. Okay, do the same for the bottom. There you go. You might notice little things, like I saw the whites of the eyes poking out a little bit there. Just look at it, go slowly through the parameter, and if you see any gaps or errors, just go in and fix those as they pop up. There you go. Now the eye closes. Now, for what we're going to do with this little gap here. First, you're going to go to 1.2. You're going to place down a keyform. We'll start with the top of the eye again. And then you want to go all the way to 1.5. Once again, this gap will be left here intentionally. You will not move anything between these two keyforms. This will prevent your eyes from jittering. This is not technically necessary. However, you basically allow for more expressiveness in your model. And it's an easy way to incorporate more expressions. All you do is move this up, push the middle parts of this up. Now go to the bottom. Again, 1.2, and then 1.5. Push it down a little bit. You could tuck this in slightly. Now the eyes will widen slightly. VTube Studio will respond to your eyes widening by further pushing the eye open parameter, meaning that you don't need to do any additional sort of key binding or other programming to get this to respond to your expressions. And then do the same thing with the whites of your eyes. You're just going to do the same process by pulling up, pull down, and now that error from before is gone. Because now, oh, almost forgot the eyelashes. There you go. Your eye will rest here, but if you widen your eyes, the eyes will respond in kind. Now let's go to the eye shine, the pupil, the iris, and the iris color. You're going to want to click on either the bottom or top of this list, and then press Shift to highlight them all. You want to go into the automatic mesh generator. You can do this by hand too, but I've found this one is completely fine to do automatically, just standard, because generally these are round shapes, and while the automatic mesh generator can oftentimes get a bit confused with complex lines and angles, it can do circles without much trouble. Now then, create a warp deformer. Say this is Iris A. Now then, you can make the widening of the eyes look a bit more convincing and expressive by adding in the pupils shrinking ever so slightly. You see how that subtle change in size has such an impact on the expressiveness? Alright, now I'm going to do the other eye. Alright, now both eyes are done. You can always check your movements and your physics by going to Open Physics Scene Blending Settings. As you can see, the eyes are moving as they're supposed to. You can also hit this button up here for your default parameters to be moved around in a random way. This can allow you to check several things in your model, but for now we're just going to have it blank. Here we go. Now, as I don't believe Live2D will recognize this part here, we will not see the eyes widen. However, we can always adjust it manually to check how the eyes look when widened. Now, you've probably noticed before, when looking at Live2D models by other people, that a lot of the highest quality ones are very bouncy in all of their movements, including the movements of the eyes. Now, the surefire way to get bouncy, lifelike movements that are very animated and expressive on your models is to use physics. Just as many physics as you can do, and you will apply physics to pretty much every aspect of your model if you want to go for that sort of bouncy, alive look. And the eyes are no exception. So what you want to do first, for the eye physics, we want to make it so that when the eyes blink, the pupil and the iris will sort of wiggle and bounce, and sort of like they're made of jello. It's not exactly a realistic effect, eyes don't do that, but it looks aesthetically pleasing. Now, what some newbies or some new users of Live2D don't know is that you can put warp deformers inside of each other. This is a necessity for any sort of Live2D modeling. What you're going to want to do is select pupil, the eye and the iris line, and base. You don't want to select the shine. It looks a lot better when the shine moves a bit separately from the rest of the eye, as it then looks like a reflective surface on top of the eye instead of just glued on. So you want to create Iris A, B. First, let's do our looking around movements. You just want to combine the eyeball X and eyeball Y using this little chain icon. If you hit this, it will automatically form a square-like parameter with the whichever parameter is below it. So for example, if I were to select angle X and hit this, it will automatically join with angle Y. If I hit angle Z, it will mix together with IL open, which obviously we don't want to do. Now then, combine eyeball X and eyeball Y. This will control where your model is looking. Hit the 3 green dots and just following each direction, move the iris up, down, and side to side. You'll want to do each iris separately instead of just selecting them both and moving them as one sort of unit, because a lot of times you will be sort of adjusting the movement to look right at certain angles. For example, when you're trying to look off to this side, this iris, iris A, will move a lot more than this one. If you move them equally, you would probably end up with the eye being too far. So you want to move them both separately. Once you have these 4 sides, what you're going to want to do is go to Modeling, Parameter, and Synthesize Corners. This will automatically put the corners of your movement, so you don't have to do that yourself. You can if you want to. Sometimes you will want to get more precise movements. But in this case, it is completely fine to just do it in that way. Now go back to the eye shine, and you're going to want to move the eye shine alongside the iris and pupil. However, since it will be moving separately, it will create a nice effect that makes it seem like it's a shine on top of the eye instead of just a part of it. Generally, you'll want the shine to move less than the iris. Synthesize corners. Oops. See, this is why you want to adjust things by hand a little bit. Sometimes things don't quite look right. You can always hit synthesize corners again, and then go back to physics and move your mouse around to have the model look at your mouse. This can help you test head turning and pupil movements. As you can see, the eye shine moves separately from the iris, which creates a nice 3-dimensional effect. You will repeat this with the other eye. Alright, that's both eyes. Now what you want to do is create another warp deformer on top of the second iris deformer. Not the first one that we used for the eye opening and closing, but the second one that we just made. We'll want to make another one on top of it. You can call this one iris physics. Now you'll want to make a new parameter. Now keep the default in the middle and hit 3 keyforms. Now, for the lowest keyform, make it smaller. And for the highest keyform, make it bigger. You'll need to adjust it to make sure it stays centered. Do the same for the other eye. Alright, now then go into your pupil and create pupil physics. You'll create a new parameter, pupil L physics, and you'll repeat the same thing, but this time with the pupil. Do the same for the other pupil. Alright, and one more set of parameters for the eye shine. Create another warp deformer so it doesn't interfere with the eyeball movement. Now, what you're going to want to do, instead of expanding it, you kind of want to rotate it. This is just personal preference. You can do the same sort of shrink and expand bounce, but I think it's nice when it sort of wobbles from side to side. But again, the specifics of the movement can be altered based on your personal preference. Alright, now you have several parameters of physics to make your eyes bounce. Now go to Modeling, Open Physics and Scene Blending Settings. This time, we'll be making physics. Do blink. Do not bother with input preset or physics model preset, as we'll be making all those ourselves. It's very easy, so don't worry. Go to Input and Add IL Open. You're going to want to go to Group Editing and make sure you specify, go to Rename, specify this is blink A, because you're going to want the physics to move separately for each eye. That way, if you wink with one eye, the other eye won't react to the physics. Oops. Accidentally. There we go. Okay, now move effectiveness up to 100. Now then, in pendulum settings, hit Add until you have 3 pendulums. There are various things you can edit here based on preference, so I would recommend if you're not satisfied with the results, just play around with these settings until you have an effect that you're happy with. But for now, I'm just going to leave them at their defaults. For the output settings, you're going to want to select the eye physics, the pupil physics, and the shine physics. With the 3 parameters selected, they will default to being 1, 2, and 3. With the eye being 1, the pupil being 2, and the shine being 3. What the pendulums do is they ensure the physics follows the object of a higher number ahead of it. This is technically not necessary, but it does have a nice effect in which the physics don't all move at once. As you can see, there wasn't much movement there. How do we increase that? Go to Increase Output. There you go. Do you see it now? Let's see it with the Random Pose option. Ignore the other eye at the moment, it is just randomly moving around parameters. But as you can see, there's lots of nice bouncy movement going on with the eye we've finished. This is exactly the kind of movement you want to go for, as it makes your model look more alive. Now, there's a lot more you could do with the physics with the iris. You could add in different effects that move around. You could even make the eyes themselves sort of physics on top of each other so that the blinking itself has a bouncy effect to it. However, I don't find that to be entirely necessary unless you really want. I don't find that to be completely necessary unless you want it, in which case it's all the same idea as what we just went over. Alright, now we'll add the same thing, blink B for the other eye. IR open, effectiveness 100, 3 pendulums. Alright, and now when they blink, the physics have a nice bouncy look to them. This will look even better once your model is actually being used in a program like VTuber Studio, as the movements will be a lot smoother and more natural. Meanwhile, for this random previewing, a lot of the movements are very stilted, as they are just moving from one point to another and staying there. Meanwhile, active movement will be much more pleasing. Alright, now let's apply some physics that will move the eyes when the eye's gaze looks around. Thankfully, this is much easier and only requires one parameter. It will go eye jiggle. Select your top deformer, do iris A3. You can name them whatever you want, by the way. I'm just naming them whatever makes sense to me. Others might find it more confusing. Now what I have to do is squish it down from top to bottom, then I go out to here, and squish it down from side to side. You can use the same parameter for the other iris. Alright, now go to Open Physics, Scene Blending. You can name it whatever you'd like. And for the input, add eyeball X and eyeball Y. Make them do the effectiveness up to 50. So they're both equally effective. Make sure they're both selected to position. And then add one pendulum and add eye jiggle as the output. Increase output. As you can see, more bouncy, jiggly movement. You can see it even better in the preview, and it goes very nicely with the other physics, so that the pupil seems like it is always moving. Now, what about the eyebrow or eyelashes? Well, with the eyelashes, we'll do eyelash A, make its own warp deformer, eyelash A, and then sort of pull it down like this, and repeat the process for the other eyelash. Alright, and what you're going to want to do is go up to modeling. What you'll want to do is add another pendulum. Make the duration of this pendulum a bit shorter than the rest of them. Around 5 will do. Now add the eyelash. You're going to want to do the output by hand. You can put it around 20. As you can see, the eyelashes will now jiggle alongside the iris whenever you blink. You can do this with any part of the eye lines. I've seen some people take the corners of the eye and do something similar, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we'll just stick with these. Now then, let's see these in motion. Here you go, here's the model in action.